Good afternoon, everybody. I think you had a good lunch time, so I would like to start the afternoon session. I am Atsushi INABA. I am the vice chair of this working group 4. However, chairperson of this working group 4 is Dr. YAMAJI sensei. But YAMAJI sensei already left here, so that, instead of him, I would like to chair of this afternoon session. So first of all, I would like to introduce our target of the afternoon session. Oh, sorry. So Yamaji sensei introduced already these figures. So in our working group, we focus on the two items. One is the cool earth, and second one is the clean earth. In terms of the cool earth, we focus on much focus on the GHG reduction and circulation. And then, in terms of the clean earth, we focus on the marine plastics and nitrogen circulation or something. So we have the two targets. One is the cool earth, and the second is the clean earth. And this is a very short summary of in the morning session. That is, Moonshot goal candidates. That is the realization of the sustainable resources circulation to recover the global environment by 2050. That is our goals. And then, in terms of the cool earth, we have the, we look at the, to develop the new technologies. That is the circulation. Mainly from the environment, from the air to the, some kind of the resources or some underground or something. And clean earth, that is almost the same, That is, I showed the conceptual figure in the morning, very big circulation from the environment to our society. So this is also, this figure, was shown already by the chairperson of the Professor Yamaji. So here is, y-axis is bottom is the laboratory scale, and from the laboratory scale we have the commercial scales, so many technologies, and the x-axis is the right-hand side is a high concentration. That is high concentration of the GHGs in the air, but another side is a low concentration. So we, chairperson said, we focus on the here, that is a low concentration of the substances and low, scale-up size. That is a laboratory size. We focus on this one, as a R&D project of the Moonshot. That is a short introduction of this. In the afternoon session, we have the 4 presentations. One is, Dr. Lynn Rothschild. She came from the NASA Ames Research Center. Okay, but her presentation is a special presentation for this working group. That is like the keynote presentation. Okay, and after that, we have the 3, presentation from Japan. So each presentation, probably I can say this is some candidate of the Moonshot project, okay? But just as a candidate, after presentation, after this presentation, we have to discuss, okay, what kind of the target we need in the working group 4. So, and after this presentation, I would like to moderate a panel discussion, okay? And I would like to invite also the speakers from the morning session. And then together, we would like to discuss what kind of the target we need as a Moonshot project. Is that a short introduction? Is that okay for all presenters? So let me introduce Ms. Lynn Rothschild as the first presenter of this afternoon session. Yes. Okay. So please start your presentation. Floor is yours.
Okay. There we go. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone for coming this afternoon. This is very unusual for me. I've been working at NASA for several decades, and I very seldom get asked about planet Earth. Most of my job is actually making Mars or the Moon warmer and dirtier. And so trying to make my favorite planet cleaner and cooler is sort of the opposite of what I usually do. But what I'm going to do is try to make the argument that the sort of technologies that we're having to develop to go forward from planet Earth are actually the kind of literally moonshot projects that you should be considering to be able to make big changes on the Earth. So whereas if you're trying to make changes on the Earth, you have to worry about the politics and the economics and existing technologies, when we go forward to the Moon and Mars, there is no petrochemical industry already there. There is no plastic industry. There's no nothing. And so you can start everything from scratch and think about it without these other considerations that may keep you from making those moonshot goals. So with that introduction, why now? Obviously, you can sit around and wait and hope that nothing's going to happen like the dinosaurs did, and then you're in big trouble. But we all know that the Earth has problems. I just pulled, Googled and Scientific American lists some of the top problems facing the Earth, and climate change comes up immediately, water depletion, ocean overfishing, and so on. The UN Foundation identifies climate change and sustainable development as the top two goals. Of course, the moonshot goals fit right in with this, the full recycle system for resources and materials and so on. You're aware of those. But what I really love is the way this is being summarized as cool Earth, clean Earth. And that pretty much says it all, I think. So I congratulate you for a very clever sort of way to sell this. So the 20th century solutions for these sorts of problems were industrial. We just build a bigger plant, we build cities, we build bridges, we build houses and so on, we build factories. But the 21st century solution is going to be very different. The technology that we're going to be using both on this planet and off this planet is a very interesting one. It's a technology that is programmable, just like computers. It's one that's modular. It's one that's self-replicating, so already we're beyond what a computer can do. And self-repairing, which is far better than a computer can do. It has advanced chemical synthesis capability, including making polymers. It can sense as little as a single molecule, even when dormant. It can do precise mineral extraction and deposition. Some of them have built-in solar cells. They don't need petrochemical inputs or electrical inputs. In fact, some of them can run primarily in carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water. They can be dormant with minimal energy input. Atomic scale precision assembly, evolvable, and there are already 10 million or so variants available today. So doesn't this sound like the technology that's going to solve all your problems? Of course it is. And what I've just sold you is a technology called life. And so when you start to think of biology, of life itself as a technology, you can start to solve all sorts of problems that couldn't be done in the last century. And when you add synthetic biology to that, you're even more powerful. So synthetic biology, in a very simple way, is the design and construction of new biological functions and systems not found in nature. And in fact, it can exploit the power of AI for additional power. And this is being done by several companies, including one that we visited the other day in Tokyo, Synthetic Gestalt. But probably this is as good a way as any to explain synthetic biology. If you don't laugh, you're not following me, so please feel free to. So synthetic biology is reprogramming life, and on the Earth today, this is being used to make fuels, pharmaceuticals, materials for manufacturing and environmental control, and my job is to exploit some of that, and science as well, and to take some of these technologies to the Moon and Mars. But again, I remind you that what's happening primarily is using these on Earth. Now, we're very interested in this symposium on what we do with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And I remind you that, again, the technological solution is life, because life does carbon chemistry. In fact, that's its specialty. Carbon is the fourth most abundant element in the universe, and life here is built on carbon. In my other job, where I'm looking for life in the universe, I usually argue that every life form that is ever going to be found in the universe is based on carbon. And so there is nothing better at doing carbon chemistry than life itself. Every cell in your body does carbon chemistry than the most distinguished Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. In fact, you can think of the cell, you can think of life as a micro machine that does carbon chemistry. Carbon is the backbone of life on Earth. We're made of carbon. We eat carbon. Our civilizations, our economies, our homes, our means of transport are all built on carbon. We need carbon, but that need is also entwined with one of our most serious problems facing us today, global climate change. And so I remind you, I sort of stole the numbers from another picture, but I thought you might want to see a pretty picture of San Francisco at sunset. And the issue is that we've got carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's pulled down by organisms, whether it's organisms in the ocean, phytoplankton, seaweeds and so on, or plants as biomass, or brought down as soil carbon. And this is something that's been going on for probably over 3 billion years. In fact, we have a depleted, actually, situation with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This is the wrong group to say this, but when life arose, there were several orders of magnitude more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So all this is great, but the problem is it also goes back in a cycle. And so you get the remineralization from the surface ocean, microbial respiration, and so on, and you get a cycle going on, which is okay, but then you add in the human aspects. We've got more plant respiration going on and more human emissions. And so this is creating an unbalance. And so the point of this I'd like to say is that if you have a technology that takes the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, but then it sends it right back through remineralization, it doesn't really help you much. If you store it in surface soils and bacteria eat that carbon that you've just stored there and send it right back into the atmosphere, you haven't really helped yourself. You need to take this carbon out of circulation. And all these transformations, of course, use biological enzymes. And using synthetic biology, we have the potential to make even better enzymes, or ones that do something that life has never evolved before, and so that we can even improve this carbon storage. So that's sort of the background, and what I'd like to do for the rest of my time is give you a little bit of the pitch that I usually give when I'm arguing for why we need synthetic biology and biology as a technology off-planet. But I'd like to make the point that some of these solutions are ones that we can also use to solve our problems on the Earth. All of the examples, I believe, are ones that we're doing in my lab right now or have in the last few years. So these are not just crazy ideas into the future for the most part. These are things that we're doing now. Not that they're not moonshots, but we're getting them started now. So here we are on planet Earth. This is NASA Ames, where I work. It's in California. It's not too far from San Francisco. Probably everyone has heard of our big neighbor called Google. We're also in the same town with 23andMe, and we're just next door to Apple Computer and Facebook and all the other companies that clog up our highways. So I work somewhere down that road past that one-way sign. And this is all fine. You can communicate with other people very easily when you're on planet Earth. But as you start to go up and the Earth recedes, and there you can see the San Francisco Bay. I've given you NASA, Stanford's really near there. And then you move on to some place like the moon, the Earth gets smaller and smaller in the distance. And so as people go to the moon and beyond, they're going to have to be much more self-reliant. I usually use a picture from NASA. I use a picture from JAXA to thank you for all your great space work. And when you get to Mars, the problem's even worse. Can anyone here find planet Earth in this picture? This is an actual photograph. I'll help you out. There's planet Earth. And just because I can, here's a photograph taken by the Cassini mission of Saturn. Again, can you find planet Earth? So you can see from the perspective of space, we're a little tiny dot. And so people who go to the moon and certainly to Mars and beyond are going to have to be self-sufficient. They're going to need all sorts of things that we even need on the Earth. They're going to need transportation. They're going to need life support, such as food, oxygen, medicine, waste recycling, clothing, and so on. Habitats, power, heat, light, radiation protection, communication systems, and of course cash, because you don't get anywhere without that. So many of these things are ways that we're actually generating carbon dioxide right now and polluting our environment. So as we take these needs off planet, we can think maybe there are better ways to do all these things. So we have all these needs for human settlement, but we have huge challenges off planet. And one of the big things is up mass and up volume, because it's extremely expensive to launch anything in space. So what we're trying to do is force miniaturization. So when my colleagues might have a piece of equipment on their lab bench that weighs 300 kilograms, I want it to be 300 grams. And again, you can see by this miniaturization and automation that we have to have, it's going to help our Earth-based colleagues, whether it's allowing for point-of-care diagnostics or simply using fewer resources on planet Earth. And that is tied in with the cost, of course. We need to have things that can be stored, that are reliable, and they're flexible. You can't say, oops, I forgot when you're on the moon or Mars. You just can't do that. We have to worry about power. And so the point is that when you go off planet, you have the ultimate goal of self-sustainability. You have to be self-sustainable. You're starting with a blank slate for the most part, except a little CO2 and frozen water. But other than that, you have the ultimate circular economy. In fact, the joke among the astronauts is that today's coffee was yesterday's coffee. So that we're already starting to recycle things like urine and so on. We're going to have to recycle basically anything that involves water or carbon as we go off planet. It's not just a good idea off planet. We have no choice. And again, I suggest that the solution for many of these problems is life itself, which is the ultimate technology for sustainable development. So I was asked a few years ago as we were starting this program for the agency, what's the big idea? And I thought that I'd already gotten them very excited, and that was the big idea, but apparently that wasn't enough. So I took a deep breath. I probably said the word Star Trek, and so this is then the rest of the pitch. So what is the big idea? Let me give you a couple of them. And again, my suggestion is that many of these big ideas are exactly the sort of things you're looking for in this Moonshot program. So for example, we use organisms for material production. Looking around the room here, there are many people who have wool and cotton on and leather. There's wood in the room and so on. So we use things like this, sheep and trees and so on, as our sources for raw materials. They're all, of course, energy intensive, and some of them produce carbon dioxide, some of them draw them down. But the fact is we're not going to take any of those things with us off planet. We're not taking sheep and trees. We're not taking silkworms. Well, maybe silkworms. We're not taking rubber trees. We're not going to take fields of cotton. But we are going to take something like this. This is a bacterium called Bacillus subtilis. It grows in the soil, and those white dots are spores. So it's incredibly resistant to things like radiation in the space environment. So therefore, you can store these capabilities in a dried spore for years just on a piece of paper. No energy input, no refrigeration, no nothing. And then program them to make things like silk or wool or cellulose or spider silk. So let me give you an example of material production. I don't know if anyone else here had a mushroom for lunch today. You know, we don't think much of the humble mushroom. But remember, that's just the fruiting body of a fungus. Under the ground, there are fine threads called mycelia. And there's a micrograph I took of mycelia. And it turns out that if you take the mycelia, you can either grow them by themselves and press them and get something that really looks like imitation leather, or you can use them to bind other materials and make something hard. And I think you just saw the animation of one of my students sitting on a stool that he made with mycotexture, as we call it, last summer. So you can see when you take these fungi and let them grow around wood chips or garden scraps or coffee grounds or tea leaves or leftover parts of rice plants or anything that's a waste product, you can make a very hard material. And say, you can see there's a stool. I have colleagues who are architects who are making whole boards out of this. People have started looking at this as a building material. We actually have a program going where we're suggesting that we use fungal mycelia to make habitats off planet. Here's the Apollo 11 lunar module, and that's a very tiny living space. I calculate it's about the size of a prison cell block at Alcatraz if it was only 5 feet high. That's fine if you're only spending 36 hours on the moon and you're the first person to land there. It's so exciting. You know, I don't know about you, I would do almost anything. But you can't spend long periods of time, so we've suggested there's a better way, that you could actually make habitats using fungal mycelia growing inside plastic bags. There's no reason you can't use this for quick building materials on the Earth. In fact, my colleagues who are architects have also thought along with us about using this for quick habitats for disaster relief. But as I say, people are starting to use this to make imitation wood. So that actually it turns out they're better, they're more fireproof than real wood. You could use this for concrete. You could do all sorts of things. In fact, we've used this sort of strategy to make the body of a biodegradable drone years ago. People are looking in terms of plastic substitutes. For example, the packing material for shipping bottles of sake. There's no reason you need to use a plastic. Why not use a fungus that'll be biodegradable? In fact, I took this picture at lunch the other day. There are very few things here that we couldn't actually make with fungal mycelia. Isn't that fun? I mean, you could certainly have done the napkins all the way to, obviously, sake and soy sauce are made with filamentous fungi. And in fact, they'll eat nearly anything, which we discovered by emptying out my cabinet. So I took, again, this picture the other day, and I looked at all this garbage out in the street. I don't see why you couldn't grind that up and, you know, let the fungal mycelia make that into a structure. Just get that off the street, and then you're taking that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and storing it somewhere. When I was talking to Kosuke Fujishima about this talk a couple of weeks ago, we started thinking, why not take inedible parts of rice plants and make playground equipment, or starting to build houses with some of the garbage and so on. Again, the beauty of this is that you think about that carbon cycle, you're taking it out of the system. In fact, there are many fungi that can detoxify various compounds. Moving on from there, biology does chemistry on the Earth. I suggested that with the sake and soy sauce, but obviously there's a lot of other things that biology does in terms of our chemistry. There's no reason not to do that off planet. Nanotechnology, every cell in your body is a better nanotechnologist than any professional. And we've actually had a project, just graduated PhD student, Simon Vecchione, who's found a way to incorporate silver atoms into the DNA double helix to make an almost, you know, infinitesimally small wire. Metals, there's again no reason that you can't use life to recover metals. And so we've had big projects going on that for a long time. For example, taking something like spent electronics, taking the proteins that bind these metals, grind up your integrated circuit, use these enzymes or proteins to pull the metals back out, and then reprint an integrated circuit. And we've done a little proof of concept on that, which we've now started to expand using something like, again, a fungal mycelium as a substrate for these proteins that then will bind metals, and you then have a filter. And we just published on that a couple of weeks ago and have a provisional patent that's been filed by NASA on that. And so we're showing the way where you could extract metals in a completely non-toxic way at room temperature. And this is an enormous problem for the electronics industry and actually for all of the nations on the Earth, is where are we going to be able to get our rare earth elements and recycle our others. Certainly you can use biological production of electricity. All of us in the room are using our lunch to do electrical conductance, and I know we have a speaker all about that this afternoon. It's not me, that was obviously not my title. We can take life and we can expand its capabilities so it could live at higher temperatures or lower temperatures, or maybe someday we start from scratch and we make a new life form that does exactly what we want without worrying about all the constraints that evolution has put on life over the last 4 billion years. And so in the last 30 seconds or so I have, I'm going to tell you that because of these sort of basic concepts, A few years ago, we were asked by the German Space Agency to provide a secondary payload for a satellite. And I'm very pleased to say that we now have had it orbiting the Earth since last December 4th, so December 4th, 2018. And the main part of the payload, most of it's synthetic biology, but the thing that's named after PowerCell is using this idea of biology to start a whole carbon economy off-planet. And so, of course, this is the way the life works on Earth. In fact, this is the carbon cycle that we have today because there is life. We have primary producers pulling the CO2 from the atmosphere, and some of them, like some cyanobacteria, pull in the nitrogen as well and fix that. And then you have a secondary producer, like maybe a cow, that can eat the primarily produced materials, and then we can have other products from that, whether it's a sweater or leather or whatever. And what we're saying is take those functions and swap out microorganisms. So we have a cyanobacterial power cell, we call it, and a producer cell. There's that Bacillus subtilis you saw before, and maybe it's making something like cotton. And then we simply take it off Earth and we plunk it down on some place like Mars, and you've got a new carbon economy off planet. So let me give you a few final thoughts. I've told you about some of the needs for human settlement. They're exactly the same needs that we have to survive on Earth, except that we get oxygen here as a given in gravity. We don't get that off planet. But they're huge challenges for human settlement. But because we have all these constraints when we go into space, we're able to do highly creative things that would be very difficult to argue on Earth unless you have something that's very visionary, like a Moonshot program. So we're forcing game-changing solutions again. Maybe I should just change the slide to say Moonshot solutions on Earth and beyond, using life to do carbon chemistry, including carbon capture. And therefore, we're using life to make a cool planet and a clean planet. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lynn. And I would like to take some, question to clarify her presentation. Do you have any questions? First, the presenters of this, working group. Do you have any questions? No? My question is how to use, you introduce biosynthetic
biology, yes.
Yeah, biology. But how to use such kind of small things to the big, environmental issues?
Well, that's how life works on the Earth. We use small things. We use that enzyme ribisco, which is what I happened to done for my thesis. It's the most prevalent protein in nature. That's the protein that takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It's because of these little cyanobacteria that we even have 20% oxygen atmosphere. That power is highly distributed and highly effective. So I wouldn't, just because it's small doesn't mean that it's not extremely powerful. It's a distributed solution for a distributed problem.
Okay, the small things has so much power, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that was an interesting presentation, and it's exciting to think how much progress is happening in biology, but also in the computing power that's maybe enabling some of this. And also the needs are so clear on this planet and on others. What do you see as the biggest challenges that might get in the way of realizing some of this potential? And
in space?
Yeah, or on Earth. I mean, how would it, what is it that would stop us from accomplishing some of these really high potential solutions?
Well, again, I don't normally spend my time dealing with that because I'm normally off planet, and I think that one of our biggest problems is the effect of long-term space travel on human physiology, which I didn't get into. But in terms of the Earth, and again, this is a little bit outside my realm, but much more in yours, Greg, it's the political and the economic issues. That if we have companies that are already heavily invested in using petrochemicals, and they want to think of themselves as an oil company instead of an energy company, then there are going to be big headwinds, as there is with the coal industry in our country and so on. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges, and that's why it's kind of fun because I can go to a mixed group and other people say we couldn't possibly do this because of these economical and political problems. And I say, well, you know, it's great because I don't have those problems, so I can make those changes. So again, I think that's where the issue is on planet Earth. It's not that we don't have ideas and we couldn't do it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to move to the next presentation, but I would like to give all yours, you know, to all of you, the 10 minutes presentation, and I would like to take the question from the floor, and all of you 5 minutes. Okay, so 10 minutes presentation and 5 minutes question. All right. So please start your presentation. First presentation is Dr. Fuyuhiko Inagaki-san. So please.
Thank you, Inaba Sensei, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fuyuhiko Inagaki. I'm professor in Kogakuin University. At first, I appreciate to the Japanese government, JST, and NEDO for inviting me to this symposium. Today I want to talk about the direct air capture, so-called DAC, and our new technology regarding CO2 selective absorbance in air. This slide shows the general technology for the CCS, carbon dioxide capture and storage. In this case, the exhaust gas from the fire plant, CO2 concentration about 15% is captured by absorbents such as the amine compound. And then the combined CO2 is released for heating to get the 100% of the CO2. Then the gas was storage underground or sea bottom. However, this technology has one problem. If it's far away between the fire plant and the storage point, we need to transport gas to the storage point using by the pipeline, shipping, or something like that, which needs much cost. So in other words, CCS has a location limited. But the DAC, direct air capture, might solve this problem because in the DAC technology, the capture the CO2 in air, so everywhere we can get CO2. But the concentration is very low, 0.04 volume %. But if we succeed to get the CO2 in air effectively, we must get a location-free systems. And now, CCS and DAC technology are already researched in all over the world. But this technology has a common task. Oh, sorry. Which is a reduction of CO2 separation energies. For example, CCS in Japan, the Center for Low Carbon Society Strategy, LCS, proposed for realizing the CCS. The CO2 separation current, 2.5 megajoule per kilogram CO2, is so high. So we need to reduce to the 1.5 megajoule per kilogram CO2 for realizing the CCS. But we need the 40% we can save. And in case of the DAC, DAC is already researched in the many countries. For example, the Climeworks, Switzerland, Carbon Engineering Canada, Global Thermostat US, they already treat the several moderate amount of the CO2. And this report describes that the DAC possesses a highly potential for CO2 reduction. In addition, today morning, the Inaba Sensei and Professor Nemeth already reported this point. So this technology has a common task. So we need to reduce the releasing and heating energy, which is the key process. So we need how to reduce the releasing energy. it might be a water separation. Because, for example, 30% MEA monoethanol amine aqueous solution, which is the general condition for CCS studies. After capturing the CO2, the heating condition gave the CO2 gas, but the totally 80% energy is used for heating the water. So if we succeed to get the anhydrous condition, theoretically, we can save 80% energy. But in general, this water separation is very difficult because the amine compound is a hydrophilic group. And as you know, soda, CO2 is water soluble. So amine react with CO2, but water is also react to avoid bicarbonate, carbonate, and further hydration. So hydration is inevitable. For example, the 2011 direct air capture of CO2 with chemicals are reported by the American Physical Society. And they reported, they pointed out the contamination of water is a problem, but it is very difficult. So they discussed how to reduce energy except for the hydration process. On this graph, we found the CO2 selective absorbent in air without hydration. The concept is very simple. Just introducing the phenyl group, which is a hydrophobic group, in the amine compound. And our amine compounds are commercial sources, so we can promise the mass production. And they are chips for our technology. As the capture process, CO2 selectivity increased, and some compounds absorb CO2 only. And in our compounds has a similar absorption ability with MEA. And the releasing point, at the releasing process, our compound has a similar heating temperature with MEA, and some compounds under the 100 degrees Celsius. And we succeeded to absorb the CO2 only. So after heating, we can get a pure CO2 gas. This is a CO2 selectivity slide. When we put the amine in air at room temperature for 1 week, amine reacts with CO2 and moisture, water in air. And then we calculate the ratio. For example, MEA monoethanolamine, 1 mole of MEA absorbed 0.33 of CO2 and 1 mole of water. So 3 times water absorbed. So finally, we calculate as moisture content as 300%. And these compounds are general CCS absorbent. For example, in case of EDA, 15 or 16 times of water absorbed than CO2. So it might be a discount rather than the CO2 absorbent. The right table shows our compound having the phenyl group. For example, the monoamine, benzylamine BZA, phenethylamine PEA, PMBZA, PTFM-BZA absorb the CO2 selectively. And the final moisture content was only 25%, which is 10 times lower than the MEA. Furthermore, when we use a diamine compound, such as OXDA, orthoxylenediamine, MXDA, metaxylenediamine, PXDA, paraxylenediamine, absorbs CO2 only, so final moisture content was 0%. This is a mechanism slide. Interestingly, the MXDA is a water-soluble liquid, but this liquid absorbs CO2 only to afford the MXDA CO2. Then this compound changed to the insoluble in water and changed to the solid. And we succeed to get the X-ray structure of this compound. The result is shown here. This result means probably the MXDA react with CO2 to form the carbamic acid. And another molecule of amine neutralized with this carbonic acid to make these types of the hydrogen bond network, which are described as a dot line. So this dot line is very weak for the water. But in this case, the outer phase, both outer phases are consisted by the hydrophobic phenyl group. So this phenyl group kick out to invade the water, which might be a waterproof mechanism. And this is the absorption ability. We put on the amine in box and closing the door, and we measured CO2 concentration in box time by time. And when we try the MEA, the initial 600 ppm, after the 6 hours, reduced to the 100 ppm. And this graph shows our compound having the phenyl group. These compounds also the similar absorption ability. So after 6 hours, almost all compound is 100 ppm. This is the utility of CO2 gas. We can get the CO2, we can get to absorb CO2 only for using the MXDA. So the resulting MXDA CO2 after the heating at 130 degrees Celsius, we can get the CO2 only. So we call it dry CO2. So when you use the dry CO2 as a Grignard reaction, Grignard reagent is very moisture sensitive. But in this case, the desired carboxylic acid are observed in quantitative yield. However, when we use the general amine, such as the MEA, MEA absorbs the CO2 and water. And after heating, CO2 is also generated, but the water is also contained as a vapor. When you use the wet CO2, this compound is also obtained, but the chemical yields are dramatically decreased because this is a moisture sensitive, so immediately water reacts with this reagent. Okay, this is my information. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Inagaki-sensei. Do you have any questions about this presentation? Okay, please.
So when you look at your absorption rates, I mean, it takes 6 hours to do this?
Yeah, so just put on the amine.
So when you go into a flue stack and do this, how big would your tank to be to capture all this in? Because I mean, 6 hours seems to be a very long time.
Yeah, you are right. So we need to increase the reaction speed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one process missing, we will succeed to speed up.
How much?
Oh, I cannot say now, but absolutely, the rate is up.
Can you believe that one? Yeah.
And I think about we should solve this problem, solve this problem, and we are trying now.
Okay, Bennett-san has some question.
Yeah, so I could see the selective amines allow you to use less energy because you don't have to heat up the water. Does it also lead to using less amine total? I'm thinking of the quantity of, depleted amine that you might have to deal with if we're talking about, gigatons of removal.
So what's more? Yeah?
Does it also use less solvent, or is it just less energy?
Yes, energy and less solvent.
So yeah, we need to calculate the CO2 separation energy. So now we are trying it. But we trust our amine is lower than the general amine.
Because his product has not the water, at the catch of the CO2. The water evaporation is a very much high energy. So that means, he can reduce the energy to get some CO2. Okay?
Thank you, INABA-sensei.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to take another, questions. Please come here. Thank you. And could you tell us your name and your abbreviation? No, your company or something.
Yukihiko Matsumura, Hiroshima University. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
My question is about the regeneration heat, because you don't have water removal, but if the carbon dioxide firmly sticks to the absorbent, regeneration will require a large amount of heat. So I'm wondering if the heat is very large or not.
So so we need to try to solve such a problem. And now we are trying the heating using oil bath. Okay? But we need to try to improve this process. Yeah.
So you do not have the value now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is still, laboratory scale, okay? So do you have any questions from the floor? Is that okay? Okay, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your presentation. So next presentation is Dr. Souichiro KATO sensei, okay, from the AIST. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you for introduction. I'm Souichiro KATO from AIST, Japan. Today I want to talk about the potential of microorganisms for the technology of carbon recycling. The microorganisms greatly contribute to the carbon and material cycles in natural environment. And we have utilized such microbial activity for various biotechnologies. For example, organic waste can be degraded by microorganisms, and we can produce use through chemicals from organic waste, biomass, and even from carbon dioxide. Also, we have tried to improve these biotechnologies using the techniques from various biology research fields like this. And also, in these 2 years, we can utilize the information technology, like big data science and the AI technology, to assist such improvement of biotechnology. But considering the environmental issues, for example, complete circulation of carbon or resources, we need to develop more efficient or completely new biotechnologies with the aid of the innovative research. Today I want to say that for such innovative research, we need to collaborate with the other research field. Today, 違う。先はどれですか？これか。あ、すみません。Okay, today I want to introduce the 2 examples, such collaboration. The collaboration of microbiology and electrochemistry, and also with material sciences. Let me start from the combination of microbiology and electrochemistry. That is the microbial electrochemistry. The microbial electrochemistry studies from the discovery of electrochemically active microorganisms that can get energy by electron transfer reaction with conductive solid materials. This cartoon is from the commentary article published in Nature 2006. They introduced the emergence of such new research field as a promising biotechnology. This graph shows the increase in the number of papers related to the microbial electrochemistry. And you can see the number of papers has increased since around 2005. I can say that this microbial electrochemistry is a relatively new field with the 15-year history. Okay, there are 2 different types of electrochemically active microorganisms. The first one in the left panel, that these microorganisms oxidize organic compounds to get energy to make ATP. And then they discard surplus electrons directly into conductive materials. And these electrons behave as a free electron or electric current. So we call this one as the electric generators. The another one in the right panel, that these microorganisms can utilize the free electron in the conductive materials as their energy source. So now we can say these microbes as electricity consumers. The electricity generating bacteria can be utilized for electricity generation. Yeah, one of the most well-known systems is the microbial fuel cell, MFC, in which electricity generators convert organic compound into electric current. This is one of the fuel cells. But in the case of general chemical fuel cells, only hydrogen and methanol can be used as the fuel. But in the case of microbial fuel cells, now we can use any kind of organic compounds as a fuel, even the waste and the wastewater. This is such one example, the research project supported by NEDO. In this project, we made a cubic meter scale pilot reactor of microbial fuel cells to the wastewater treatment, and we achieved 80% reduction in the power input and also reduction in the waste sludge. So we can say that application for wastewater treatment is almost practical. But now we have many challenges for utilization of microbial fuel cell as the power source due to the low power output of this biological system. Okay, the electricity consumers can be utilized for the conversion of carbon dioxide into organic compound with the input of electric power. This technology is called microbial electrosynthesis and was firstly reported by US group in 2010. They achieved the production of suborganic compound from carbon dioxide using this photovoltaics. The better research for practical use of this microbial electrosynthesis is now still limited compared to the electricity generation. Okay, the last topic for microbial electrochemistry is the symbiosis of electricity generator and the electricity consumer. We found that in the presence of conductive material, conductive particle, the metabolisms of electricity generator and the electricity consumers can be electrically coupled, electrically connected, which result in the emergence of symbiotic relationship. Here I showed one example. This bacteria is the electricity generator, namely Geobacter. This one can oxidize ethanol but cannot reduce carbon dioxide. Another one, methanocyanide, electricity consumer, can reduce carbon dioxide into methane but cannot use ethanol. So if we simply mix them, nothing happens. They cannot produce methane from ethanol. But if we further add conductive particle, in this case, iron oxide magnetite particles, they start to produce methane. This means electrons generated by Geobacter can be transferred to methanocyanide via electric current flowing through these conductive particles, which result in the emergence of symbiotic relationship. So now we can say that such symbiotic interactions can be promoted or even newly created by just adding conductive particles. Okay, let me move to the next topic, combination of microbiology and material science. Here I showed a comparison of two systems for carbon dioxide utilization, photosynthesis and artificial photosynthesis. You know that plant and photosynthetic microorganisms can produce various complex organic compounds from carbon dioxide. But the problem of living organisms is low reaction rates and also low energy efficiency. For example, a usual plant can convert light energy into organic compound with the efficiency of less than 0.1%. By contrast, in an inorganic system, artificial photosynthesis, they have the higher reaction rate and also higher energy efficiency. In some cases, up to 10%. But the inorganic system also have demerit. For example, it's quite difficult to produce complex organic compound by using inorganic system. And also, generally, inorganic system has lower environmental compatibility. So yeah, I want to say both systems have merit and demerit. And you can see such merit and demerit is somewhat complementary. So now we can expect that we can develop better systems by hybrid or combination of these two technologies, like a semi-artificial system or something like that. I want to introduce some examples. The first one is semi-artificial photosynthesis. This was reported by the Germany group in last year. In this system, carbon dioxide is firstly reduced into carbon monoxide by an inorganic catalyst with the power from the photovoltaics. And then the product, carbon monoxide, and byproduct, hydrogen, are converted into, in this case, alcohols by an activity of microorganisms. In this case, they use the bacteria called astrogen bacteria. They reported that this system has the total energy efficiency of up to 7.5%. That this is 2 orders of magnitude higher than the usual plant system. And also they say that this system has enough durability and also economic rationality. Okay, the second example is our ongoing research project supported by RITE and AIST, the National Institute in Japan. The concept of this system is somewhat similar to the previous one, but in this case, we use the electricity consuming bacteria as the catalyst for carbon dioxide reduction. And furthermore, in this case, we use the bacteria having the ability of voltage boosting. So now we can utilize the electric power source with low quality or low voltage. So now we can use the, for example, thermoelectric conversion. So the final goal of this project is producing useful chemicals only from wastewater, waste heat, and waste gas. And considering this Moonshot project, we should make the organic compound from water, heat, and carbon dioxide in the air. I think it's also feasible. Anyway, I want to see that this kind of challenging research is required for the solving environmental issues. Okay, this is the last topic, construction of kind of cyborg bacteria. Here I want to introduce the curious bacteria, magnetactic bacteria. That this can produce nanoparticles of magnetite, like this, to sense the terrestrial magnetism. Some research groups have reported some of them have ability to fix carbon dioxide. And also, we can modify the size and number of the magnet particles. And also, we can dope, for example, manganese and cobalt into these magnet particles. This observation inspired us to get an idea to make the kind of cyborg bacteria doing photosynthesis. If we can engineer this bacteria to produce, for example, visible light responsive semiconductor, such as tungsten oxide. This is just idea without any experimental evidence. But I believe this kind of challenging research may be suitable for this Moonshot project. Okay, let me summarize my presentation. What I want to say is that biotechnologies, microbiologies has enough possibility to solve environmental issues for carbon cycling or something like that. And furthermore, we need to develop more efficient or completely new biotechnology system with the aid of innovative research. What I want to say is that one of the key for such innovative research is the combination of microbiology and other research field. Today I introduced about the combination with electrochemistry and material sciences, but as a research field also may be critical for such innovative research. Okay, that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for your good presentation. Probably the Lynn Rothschild has some comment because this is the technology using the biology.
No, I think these are all great, but I worry about both the scale up and the inputs and the outputs.
For what?
For most of these bacterial systems, I told you at lunch, I've been following this for a while, and I think these are wonderful. When someone does a student project, but can it really be turned into something that's going to be useful?
Actually, the scale-up is the big problem for this kind of technology. I showed one example, the cubic meter scale microbial. In that case, we have many troubles. Actually, the scale-up troubles.
Community stable. And
actually, we can do it, but in that case, biggest problem is the cost of electron something. So, most of the research today I show is in the basic state. So I know we have to consider about such scale-up issues. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any questions from other speakers? No? So from the floors, do you have any question to him? Please? Over there, please, first, because you gave us already the one question, so please.
Thank you very much. My name is Fuyuhiko from Kyushu University. I have a question about your final slide. So you are trying to have a relationship with other research, especially you pointed artificial enzyme or artificial intelligence system in your system. What kind of type of research can be contributed to the, what kind of research, big data science, artificial, what kind of?
For example, big data science can be used for the analysis of complex microbial assemblies, microbial communities. One is the method things. For example, now we can know which kind of microbes in our gut or something like that. In that case, we need such big data science or something like that. In the case of AI technology, now they have some research project to, for example, to improve enzyme by using the power of AI. If we want to improve the enzymatic activity, one of the ways is the random mutation. But with the aid of AI, based on some experimental data, we can expect that which point mutation is effective for improvement of the
Okay, you mean the genetical modification?
Yeah, it's one example.
Target.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the others, do you have, please?
Thank you. Yukiko Matsumura, Hiroshima University. I want to know what about the competitiveness of this technology with the conventional one? So, for example, if we want to produce methane from ethanol, maybe we can use biomethanation. So, what is the advantage of this technology over other conventional technology?
Okay. In the case of in the case of the, for example, methane production from oil compound, actually we can do it with usual general communities. In the case of our strategy, we can accelerate the reaction because in the usual case, they transfer chemicals like a hydrogen between the two microorganisms. But in our case, we just transfer only electrons. Because of the slow rate of the chemical diffusion, our system is somewhat better than to make such relationship.
So electron transfer should be much faster than chemicals.
Chemical diffusion, yes.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is, you introduced 3 types of the example, right? 3 examples.
Right.
And if you got big money from the Moonshot project, which one do you like to?
Actually, I'm interested in the last one because first 2 examples is interesting, but it's just kind of summation.
All right.
Combination.
Yeah, but the third one is just idea right now, you said.
Yes. So,
but you
so I hope someone give me only for such idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you very much for your presentation. And
thank you, Professor Inaba. I'd like to talk about marine biodegradable plastics in today's my talk. I'm Kasuya from Guma University. This is my today's talk content, and that consists of 4 parts. And first of all, I'd like to talk about background and current status of the development of the marine biodegradable plastics. As you know, we are facing environmental issues caused by marine plastic debris, which caused serious damage to the landscape, economic activity, and marine ecosystems. What is essential the problems regarding the marine bioplastic debris? First, plastic that were originally used in the ocean would cause environmental damage at high probability. And second, most plastic waste that leaks into environments could leach to the ocean. Then such a material that turn to the flow into the sea should be the substitute by marine biodegradable plastics. Then so what are the solutions? What are the solutions? And these 3 items are listed for the countermeasure for the such issues, and was degraded at G20 Osaka summit to realize Osaka Blue Ocean vision. And innovation of them means the development of the new biodegradable plastics in marine environments. Then, biodegradable plastics marine environment is expected to solve such issues. Unfortunately, now and biodegradable plastics in marine environment do not exist. Expect all the PHAs, and the PCL, and one reason and marine biodegradable plastics do not exist is that marine environment is different and unique from compared to the other environments. And the next, I'd like to talk about the development concept of marine biodegradable plastics. As mentioned, there are few marine biodegradable plastics. Therefore, we have to make a new one for solving such issues. And however, biodegradable plastics originally have a conflicting element. That is, and one is keeping good properties in use. Another is fast biodegradation after use. These 2 elements is a conflict and incompatible. It's very difficult to realize them simultaneously. Then I'd say that it's a very difficult goals. to make perfect biodegradable plastics, and which the problem is solved. Initial time of biodegradation must be controlled. Such an initial time of biodegradation controlled plastics is defined as timing biodegradable plastics, TBP, which has a switch function to start degradation. To realize the TBP, we use potentially biodegradable plastics and trigger system. The biodegradability of PBP depends on environment. For example, PBP is degradable in environment, such as a terrestrial environment, while it is not biodegradable in a marine environment. On the other hand, the trigger system causes biodegradation to the PBP, which is give a biodegradation switch function to the PBP. So sorry. And then the combination of the PBP and trigger system is expected to create TBP. And next, I'd like to introduce that recent research in lab and as a study example. And I'd like to do the introduction of the PBP example. In previous studies, we found that most aliphatic polyesters, PBADs, such as the PBADs, is some kind of a PBP. PBADs could not induce the degrading enzyme called the microbes. Then the biodegradability of them would be related to the abundance of respective degrading microbes. Then, like an ocean, in extremely small numbers of microbes environments, such materials will behave as a PBP. Then we concluded that PBADs are some kind of PBP of which the onset of the biodegradation can be controlled by appropriate triggers. And the next, I'd like to talk about trigger system. And as you know, disulfide bond is cleaved at a low ORP. And while it's stable at a high ORP. And changing ORP can used as a switch function in the biodegradation start. And for example, polymers with a disulfide bond come to the a price at a low ORP. For example, sea bottom sediment. At that time, the bond will be cleaved, which begin to decompose. And this I'll say the switch on. And after that, degradation products were mineralized completely. On the other hand, in the seawater, high ORP, at high ORP, this polymer is stable. And in the future, large-scale feasibility studies will be required for the social implementation. We also found PCL polycaprolactone is also used as a biostimulant and to start biodegradation in the PVP in marine environments. Okay. And finally, I would like to make a further proposal on the development of the marine biodegradation for social implementation. And as for the PPP and as for the PVP, it would determine the properties in TBP. To create a variety of TBPs, we must create novel PVPs with various properties, and such as strength, formability, gas permeability, thermostability, etc. And as for the switch function, then more variation of trigger systems should be proposed so that PVPs could start biodegradability absolutely, such as by salt concentration, by temperatures, as a biostimulant, or microchips, etc. And third, when it comes to the biodegradation rate control, it is also as important as biodegradation start point control, and this is will be by the control of crystallinity and the primary structure, etc., of polymers. And in addition, by control of biofilm structure formed on the polymers, called the plastisphere control. Okay. However, at the present, and there are very challenging theme, and with a lot of uncertainties. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your good presentation. His presentation is the only one presentation in terms of the cool earth. Okay, so mainly we discuss the clean earth. Mainly we discuss the cool earth, but his presentation is the only one presentation in terms of the clean earth. Do you have any questions? Oh, please, because your program has some kind of plastics, right?
Yes, one question. Now, if I understand correctly, what you are proposing is you improve the biodegradability of plastics in the sea. In the marine environment. Yeah. Will that then lead to a less efficient biodegradability on land?
This plastic?
Yeah.
No, and in general, and biodegradability in marine is more difficult than the biodegradability in the soil. Then such a marine biodegradable plastics is much more degradable in the soil. Yeah.
Okay, so please.
My question is, if you're going to biodegrade the plastics, which is probably a good idea for some things, it seems like it would be better for other uses of the plastics just to substitute something else besides a plastic.
Yeah. In the society, in our life,
just like I was talking about using fungi for packing material instead of plastics.
Your target we can use your target product in our life or not, just in the only the marine.
No. And because marine biodegradability is the most difficult. Then this idea is applicable for the all environment. Yeah. Then we can use these plastics for the all environment.
All environment or all our life.
All our life.
Instead of the normal, plastics, we can use that.
Yeah. In my opinion, that I do not completely agree with that agree with that all no.
Please use Japanese a little bit.
Yeah. No. All my opinion that is completely is not completely agreement in the all things used in the other our life, and because biodegradable plastics have all various problems. For example, that low physical properties, and yeah.
I was asking kind of an unfair question because what you're doing is wonderful. I'm just suggesting another way to reduce this. Another way to reduce the problem is not use so much plastic, that sometimes we can substitute something else. I don't know if you know, for the last few months, the San Francisco airport, you can't buy plastic bottles anymore. And you have to pay if you want a bag, so that they're forcing people to reuse metal containers and things like that. Anyway, no, it's wonderful work you're doing. I didn't mean to be critical.
But probably as far as we have to use the plastics, we have to use this kind of the plastics because right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next is panel discussion. So I would like to invite all. Sorry, before that, I would like to take some questions from the floor to Kasuya-san. Do you have any questions? Is that okay? Short question, please.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you hear me?
Okay.
My question is the mechanism of degradation. Is it by the attack of the microorganism, or is it by the radiation or UV or something?
In general, and before attack microbes polymers, and the enzyme attacks produced by the microbes. Yeah. After that, degradation products will be taken by the microbes.
Okay, microorganisms. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Please, I would like to invite all speakers in front of our, room. First of all, I would like to introduce 3 speakers in the morning session. First speaker is Dr. Martin Keller. He emphasized the energy pathway. That means, he introduced electricity network or something. That is my understandings. And the second speaker is Dr. Christian Thiel. He introduced the European Commission program that is mainly the circular economy. And then third speaker is Gregory Nemetto. Gregory Nemetto-san introduced focus on mainly the duck. Okay, so we had the 3 presentations in the morning, but in the morning session we have no time to discuss these kind of things. So if you have any question to these 3 presentation, I would like to take some question right now. So do you have each other comment or questions in the morning session? Don't you have? Please say something. Is that okay? Please.
Yes, maybe now it's in the afternoon, so we can have some controversial discussions. So I would like to maybe ask a provocative question. Martin, you emphasized a lot about the big challenge of the energy system, the system integration. So when you look at this from a moonshot perspective, do you think this would be also a good topic for a moonshot initiative to say, how can we tackle, I mean, you mentioned the big step from 10,000, let's say, devices in the system to multiply this with another 10,000. This is a huge challenge. Do you think that this would bring scope for another moonshot topic?
So, of course, I'm biased because, but I tell you why I think this is so critical is because look at all the presentations what we have seen, and there's one common theme in there. No matter what we do, we have to have cheap energy. And we know that we cannot continue to use the same source of energy because then we have still a climate issue. So this means if we want to go really and take CO2 out of the atmosphere, well, we will not do this with a coal-fired plant. So means we have to completely shift the electricity generation, which then triggers a lot more electrification for our economy, which then enables us to do other things like taking CO2 out. So today we had this little bit about the discussion during lunch when you go to Mars. I mean, if you brought this up, if you could do on a day, come back, would you go? My point is, I would say the same discussion is here. If we're not getting the energy generation onto a new paradigm, everything else following this will not work. And that's why, in my opinion, in my view, and again, I'm telling I'm biased, but the most important thing is that we systematically change the way we're creating energy. And assuming that we're going on the path that this is the cheapest form of energy, then this is what we have to implement. And I think we have to do this right to enable all the other things.
But my question is, you propose a distributed energy source network, but how to control that one? Control is very much difficult, I think. If we centralize electric power, it's very easy to control to the grid. However, distributed one is very much difficult.
That's why we need to do the research and create call it a Moonshot program, because you're exactly correct. The easiest is to keep the grid as it is, but this is not where the future is going. So, and then suddenly, look, I had the opportunity, I was in Fukushima on the 4 reactors for a couple of months ago, last year. And this is the best example. I mean, if it would have been much more distributed, we would have potentially not the same impact. So the energy system's going down this path, if we want it or not. So then the question is, with the improvements we see and that's probably one of our neighboring sessions about artificial intelligence, I think we're getting some of the tools actually to manage this and control tens of millions of devices in a way we're not able to do this even right now.
Thank you. Ms. Rothschild, please.
As a consumer and not as a professional,
Use the microphone.
we're in the process of putting solar panels on our roof because there's a tax incentive that's going down after January 1st. And so the way this works is that we generate electricity during the day. When the sun's up, it goes back into the power grid. And then at night we get some of it back. We're selling it at some rate, and they're selling back to us. And I'll tell you, the huge impetus for people like us in California is in the last couple of weeks they've turned off our power a couple of times to try to prevent wildfires. And it doesn't take very long when someone has turned off your power for 3 or 4 days to call a solar panel company and say, please install these now. So people are doing that for all sorts of reasons already. It's not something that's in the future, these distributed grids.
So can I just jump onto this for a second, because California is a wonderful example how kind of environmental issues drive the impact of the customers. Because when you see what is the first thing spiked after all the wildfires, generator sales went through the roof. Some of the generator companies increased a lot of money. So then the next thing is exactly what you described. But you know, now probably, I don't know if you will do this, but you of course add then this with storage. Because if you put batteries on there, then you're getting really that you can say, okay, turn my power off. I can manage for a couple of times. And in addition, you can charge your car and going where you can sell some of the electricity to some of your neighbors, and then immediately going to a distributed system.
And so in the case of a battery in our house, which is about 2,500 square feet, enough battery backup so that we could be completely independent at this point would be about another $30,000, which is totally out of control. That's more than the original system. And so people like us are waiting, hoping that the cost of the batteries are going to come down. So that's someplace that clearly there would be great, benefit to many people if there's progress in those areas.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to have some question from the floors to the speakers in the morning session. Please.
So this may sound a little controversial, but the clean earth and the cool earth is somewhat ironic or contains a dilemma, because, for example, if you think about those like plastics in the ocean, you can actually see those plastics to be basically sequestered carbon, CO2. But if you try to remove these plastics, then you basically bring these carbon back into the atmosphere. So what is the, I would like to ask your opinions on what will be the ultimate answer to solve these dilemma.
Tiju-san.
I think the first obvious measure that you would have to take is try to avoid that actually the plastic is going into the ocean. Of course, now you already have big plastic islands somewhere in the, I believe, in the Pacific Ocean and probably also elsewhere. I think there it's important to get it out of the ocean, but maybe not necessarily then to release the CO2. But if you can get it out of the ocean, I'm sure you can find ways to recycle it or to make a new fuel out of it. I'm sure there are processes, but I think that is actually that was actually maybe even a follow-up question to the last speaker of this afternoon. If the research and the processes that you propose for to improve the biodegradability of plastics, can you also use that actually to make use of the plastic that is already in the ocean? That would be a real a huge that would create a huge potential impact, because there is already all this plastic out there, and on a daily basis, the longer you research, the more plastic will go into the ocean. So we need to actually tackle that. That is actually a big issue, I think.
Okay, the first of all, we have to protect that to go flow out the ocean of the plastics. That is the first option.
So, look, you're assuming that you're saying plastic is a good way of sequester carbon, and I think that's already. I mean, I think the first thing which I would not agree with.
I don't think so too.
So okay, so then if you take this off, then the next question is, when we by 2050 have more weight of plastic in the ocean than we have weight of fish, then we have a big impact on the environment. I want to counter you and see how many aluminum bottles are floating in the ocean. Not many, if at all. Why? Because we're having a very good process in taking them out and recycle them in a very good way. The problem is plastic recycling. It's also interesting when you look at the data here in Japan. It's also very clear that most plastic recycling is not really working well, because the product you create has less value than the original product. That's why the recycling rates globally seen very low. That's why we're talking about upcycling. If you can find a way to take the plastic bottles or plastic in general and create precursors to then make a higher value product, which then also has some value, people will not throw the plastic bottle in the ocean. They will bring it to a place to get money.
I think you're right. So the price of basically recycling the plastic is actually doesn't meet the need to, for the recycle energy. So I think this actually goes to Kasuya-san again, because if we can make value out of the plastic, so rather than just saying biodegradable, maybe we can even say we can use these plastic as a feedstock for like microbiology or even synthetic biology.
But in the society, somewhere or sometime we have to use the plastics, because the day life plastic, not the day life plastics, but daily plastics, but special use of the plastics we need in the future, I think.
Just one, I would answer that question too without knowing the data, but just sketching. So there's 800 billion tons of carbon floating in the atmosphere. Think of how much tons of carbon is floating in plastic in the ocean. I'm guessing it maybe is 2 orders of magnitude less than that. I don't know, but it would be good to figure out that number. It just doesn't seem like it's close.
I'd still say we should be doing a much better job of discouraging people from using plastic. You go to the grocery store and everything's covered in plastic. We've got plastic bottles here, we've got plastic bags.
Okay.
We could really be cutting down much more.
Yeah, that is the first option, I think. But I would like to say that clearly, I am very proud of the Japanese recycling system. Okay, so here is we use the PET bottle. However, 99.8 or 99% plastic PET bottle recycled in Japan already. So our system, I am very proud of our system, in Japanese recycle system. That is my comment. And do you have any other questions? No? Please.
Thank you, Yukihiko Matsumura, Hiroshima University. You guys are discussing about the DAC, which is the direct-to-air capture. However, it must be taking a lot of cost to build up all the facilities. Meanwhile, if you can grow biomass, it can capture carbon dioxide automatically without problem, and we can cut it very cheaply. And maybe we can use it for another purpose. For example, when you are using electricity, not everything can be covered by electricity. For example, jet fuel, or the coke for the iron making, or the bioplastic. In this case, maybe we can use biomass for that kind of purpose. So I'm wondering, because most of you are thinking about DAC, what do you think about the possibility of biomass utilization in this sense? That's my question.
Yeah, one response I'd have is I think one of the reasons that people are interested in that is because it's getting pretty easy to envision a future where electricity is very plentiful. And if you're don't care too much about where it is, and you can do whatever activity is in a very sunny place or a windy place, then being limited by electricity doesn't seem like a really hard constraint. One thing that we are very limited by, though, is land, especially arable land, and especially with the population growing to 9 billion people. So if some of these biological solutions seem, with familiar technology, like soil or trees, and that seem cheap, as you described, and maybe have multiple co-benefits, if they're competing for land for growing food, that people are quite sensitive to that. And then finally, there's the issue of permanence. So with direct air capture, sequestered underground, that's a permanent storage, whereas trees can burn, they can be deforested, and practices can change that. So that the permanence is a big issue with that.
Okay.
Can I suggest that was exactly what I was suggesting with the fungal mycotexture, and that you can then use this biomass to build buildings or make carpets or chairs or playgrounds or roads, and you're taking it out of the system. In fact, we're even trying a little bit to get the fungi to plasticize themselves so they become even more permanent. So I absolutely resonate with your question. It's exactly what I was trying to suggest.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me change. Probably you have so many, questions, but I would like to change the direction of our discussion. Okay, so please show our discussion point. So I would like to discuss, this kind of things. First of all, other target resources. That means, Moonshot project has a broad view. Okay. But today, in the working group, we focus on the cool earth and clean earth. That's all. However, probably you can find some other target under the Moonshot project. Do you have any idea of other substances we should target? That is the first question. And second question is, what kind of the international collaboration is effective? That means, we invited the speakers from the foreign countries. So we would like to, establish some international collaboration. So what kind of the international collaboration can we do in the future? That is second question. And third question is how to realize the challenging technologies in the future. But this one is very much difficult to say. So I would like to focus on the first two questions. So I would like to have your opinion about the first of all, the first question, what kind of the substances we have to look at under the Moonlight project, Moonshot project. So please start you.
Okay, so let me go first on the first one about the target resources. So I really like the big idea about cool and clean. I really like it. This said, perhaps, and again now in the spirit of Moonshot projects, I think you're not, or what I've heard from some of the first idea of the proposals, I think it's not aggressive enough. Because when you see what you've heard, look, this is where a lot of people are already working on this. For example, when you see on microbial fuel cells or electrocellular electron transfer, just Derek Lovely is one of the persons who is very well known in the field. So I was missing who are the other people in the area. And I think my hope would be in this Moonshot program, why not going out? So look, I just did a very quick Google search, and when you look into artificial photosynthesis, what Professor Kuruma from the Tokyo Institute of Technology does in putting some of this in artificial cells, sounds real. That's a Moonshot project, in my opinion, which is really how could you really reach out and go to a much further distance to do not something which is a little increment change. I would say, in my view, the Moonshot project is this what I always call a step functions. So if you accomplish this, you really accomplish something which is not an incremental improvement of current technologies. So Interactions and collaborations. Okay.
Okay, I would like to maybe follow up on what Martin just said. My understanding actually of a successful Moonshot portfolio or project is that you should not decide today, you should not pick actually a specific solution right now, but I think you should pick the challenge, and then you should gather a team, and you should give the team the possibility to find the best solution. And this may then not be DAC, it could be something else. It could be DAC, but I don't think right now is the time to decide that. That's why you actually need you need to try to leverage all the creativity that you have. The best people, the most diverse teams, so so that you can then actually achieve your bigger target. And when you ask about the resources, I would actually argue all resources because we have still a lot of things. Also, I think Martin showed that, for example, photovoltaic modules, right now, they are not really recycled, although they have a lot of very valuable substances. So that's maybe actually not so much a question of research, probably also in terms of process technologies, but it's also a question of policies, how to ensure that you actually do the reuse, the recycling of all the valuable resources that you have already. We discussed also today batteries. Also there, it's the same story. There could be much more could be done.
Yeah, so I'd make maybe 3 points. First, I maybe echo Martin's point about ambition and thinking about speed as being a part of ambition, and maybe some of these projects that are scheduled to kind of become commercial in the 2040s, maybe that's realistic that it takes that long, but on the other hand, maybe there's ways to speed that up because that's a long time to be delivering social benefits. So that's one thing. Second, I'd echo Christian's point and maybe extend it to say that it may be important for teams that are funded and working on projects to have the flexibility to pivot to new applications or to new combinations of technologies. Sometimes just by working on one thing, you start to learn about what the limitations are or learn about some other complementary technology. So that's one. And then I think there's some other technologies that, given the Cool Earth, Clean Earth, it seems like they would fit quite well in a Moonshot program. I haven't heard anything about them. Ones that come to mind first would be like space-based solar power. It seems like that's the type of thing Moonshot might fund, and there's real challenges there about getting the energy down. And then the other one that I think you're hearing more and more about, and I haven't heard anything here, is looking at ways of blocking sunlight to cool the Earth. And that maybe has a lot of negative aspects to it, but it also might be something that people need to take seriously, and at least doing research on it. And especially the one that seems probably most benign would be to do it with sending mirrors quite high up into space, and that seems something that would fit within the Moonshot, but doesn't have the aspects of putting sulfur into the atmosphere or having local effects. So I think that's something that I'm a little surprised not to see, and that other places are working on, and that really would fit within the domain I think we were talking about.
Echoing the long term and so on, but to me the biggest thing that was missing, and I tried to bring it up, was metals. You're not going to have your power, your solar cells or anything else if you don't have access to metals. You're not going to have your batteries. You're not going to have your electronics. And this is something that Japan has a long history in, and particularly access to rare earth elements. Without going into great detail, politically, the access to these mines in the West is becoming increasingly difficult. And so we're not going to have the access, and we need clean, environmentally sound ways to recycle and reclaim the metals from our spent electronics and directly from the ground if that's still an option. And so again, that's why I've been sort of beating this horse since 2012, and finally we've got the U.S. Geological Survey and the Department of Defense's attention, because this is an enormous economic and security issue for all of us.
Okay, please.
Okay. And on the second one.
No, first one.
First one.
If you have any opinion about the first one, if you have not that, please pass to the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's somewhat similar to the Dr. Rothschild, but I'm interested in the recovery of metals or recycling of metals. And they actually, you know that some bacteria can utilize rare earth element. Yeah, actually we are doing such research. I'm interested in the, for example, creating the super bacteria accumulating rare earth element or something like that. For example, as a Moonshot project, for example, to create a system to recover rare earth element from soil particle or to recover precious metal from seawater. There's such kind of research is I want to do such.
Yes, thank you very much. You are very much interested in so many things. So please, last speakers.
Okay, so today we talk about how to capture the CO2, but we should concern about how to use the CO2, because if we succeed to capture all amount of CO2 in air, can we storage all amount of CO2 in underground? The answer is no. And can we use all CO2 in greenhouse? It is impossible, I think. So we need to exchange the CO2 to other material, such as oil or something like that. This might be a goal, I think.
Okay, but the last point is circulation. No, use of the CO2 that is already inside of the cool earth, I think that is.
Sorry.
And we can find two items. One is the metal, recycling, and the other one is some kind of the geotechnology or what do you mean? That is a global scale of the technology minute sunset. And you said first, you said a new technology, no? Yeah. Professor, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Kuruma. So, I'm just that's not my expertise. I'm just looked who is doing some artificial photosynthesis here in Japan. His name popped up, and so
okay. Yeah, thank you. And do you have any, do you have any target under the Moonshot project? If you have, please introduce us. Please.
I am Masanobu Kubota from Kyushu University. Hydrogen is one of the promising methods to reduce CO2 release to air, but today there is no topic on hydrogen. So I'd like to ask you, there is any room for the study on hydrogen in the Moonshot?
But to produce the hydrogen, we need electricity or other energies. So that is some part of the, our cool Earth project. That is my, understandings. What do you think about any other opinion about the hydrogen energy? Is that okay? My understanding is okay.
So our lab actually doing a lot of what we call integrated hydrogen. So where we're going from some of the new catalysts all the way to fuel stations. So my personal view is that the role of hydrogen is changing right now. So when you look back 10, 15, 20 years, people talk about hydrogen for transportation. I think the real value for hydrogen is as a so-called platform molecule, where a lot of the catalysis to go from electricity to carbon-carbon bonds will very likely go through hydrogen. And that's why I think it's very important to see how do you produce and generate renewable hydrogen, so out of solar and wind, and that's what I think is a very important topic.
Okay, thank you. But anyway, I think Floor and the speakers agree with our target. That is a cool Earth and clean Earth at least. And then we should put something other, target you mentioned. That is okay for us because I have to report at this this breakout session. I have to report to the plenary session. So what is the agreement of our discussion? That is at least we focus on the clean Earth and cool Earth. That is our agreement. Okay. So second question is what kind of the international collaboration is effective? So what kind of things we can do internationally? That is a question. So please.
So I'm happy to start this out. So because when you look what in my view works always very well, there's a couple of criteria which decide a good collaboration. And the one thing which always is on topic, which a lot of the collaboration fail, is exchange of money. So because it's very complicated when you go and justify that a Japanese taxpayer has to support a researcher in the US and vice versa. So that's when you look at this, where we, as you might know, where we're doing this tremendous collaboration with AIST and also with the Fraunhofer on the solar, where we now had 2 science papers out on this gigawatt challenge in solar. It works because we pay for our scientists, Japan pays for their scientists, Germany pays for their scientists. We have these common workshops together. With this, you don't have to worry about money going back and forth. So you're just funding within your own organization the exchange of scientists, where we even have scientists sent to Germany and German scientists come to us. And I think this is extremely important. But to make it easy, take the money transfer out. Support the scientists in your own country and create through our politicians bilateral agreements that there's money in the US to support this and there's money in Japan to support Japan. And in this way, I think, in my view, it's always the easiest and the most productive collaborations this way.
I wanted to share that I think you are all aware that since more than a decade, I think we have an ongoing international Moonshot project in the field of energy. And that is the International Fusion Reactor, ITER. So, I don't know, there is maybe lessons learned that you can draw from that. But in principle, in my view, this is a really big Moonshot project with a very long time horizon, which also gets longer over time. But I think it's definitely something maybe for you to look into from this international perspective. The ambition of the goal, the long-term perspective, and well, I would leave it there right now because I also echo what Martin just said, and I alluded to that during my presentation. Since a long time, we have a very good ongoing collaboration with AIST and with NREL on photovoltaics, which involves also sending around modules and cells for laboratory intercomparison, and it works because everybody pays for themselves. But obviously in the European Framework Program, we do sometimes have joint calls also with Japan. So I think there is a lot of possible mechanisms. And maybe if you allow me, I wanted to quickly come back to the one point that the gentleman shared on hydrogen. In Europe, you know that also since more than a decade, we have a hydrogen and fuel cell joint undertaking. And I see the topic of hydrogen actually not necessarily as a moonshot, because the joint undertaking is actually a public-private partnership. And it was meant, or it is meant, to actually overcome this valley of death. So to come from proof of concept to deployment. I think hydrogen for me, it's not a moonshot topic in the way that you first need to do a proof of concept. I think the proof of concept is there. You just need to bring down the costs, and you need to make it commercially viable. That's also a very big undertaking, but I don't see this as a moonshot topic.
Yeah, and just on the, I'm really glad you have point two, because I think that's a really important aspect of making some of these innovations successful and also happen in a timely manner. The only couple things I'd add is I would think it's important to talk not only about formal collaborations internationally, but informal collaborations. And that just means where it's smaller groups or individuals, but that the ability to do visits, to have small collaborations, doesn't have a lot of barriers up against it. And I guess that brings up the third point that I've had, and this is more from working in a US context, but I've really realized over the last year, there is this idea, I've seen in the US and other places too, which I call almost innovation nationalism, that there's this idea that we want as much of the activity for these innovative new technologies to be contained within national borders. And that's just not how the world's set up today. It's not how technologies work. If you look at the history of wind power or solar, that's not at all how they worked. There's each country, each place contributes something distinct and different, and it's building on those complementary capabilities that leads to successful innovation. So that's something, an argument I've started making in the US about the real risks of putting up barriers to collaboration internationally, mainly because it slows things down, and I don't think we have a lot of extra time for the cool Earth and clean Earth.
Yeah, I echo what Martin said, but with the financial issue, it's incredibly frustrating to have then one partner get the funding and the other partner can't contribute. And in the US, there are some agencies that can't fund someone overseas, for example, NASA. And then there's some agencies that can. They look for the best ideas anywhere in the world, and they fund them because they want to know what the best research is. So it's not impossible. The US taxpayers are already funding some of the best research around the world through various programs. But if you're not going to go that route, I would suggest some sort of discussion at the governmental level before there's a call for proposals. So I'm on a proposal, for example, with someone from Japan, that there's an agreement that if it is passed review in Japan, that the United States will pay my part or whatever. There are ways to do this rather than leaving one set of the people fumbling after the decision's made. It's too easy for that to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. And the two three speakers, I would like to ask, what kind of the international collaboration do you have already in the future, please?
Yeah, and in development of marine biodegradable plastics, and we must evaluate the biodegradation in the marine environment. And now we test the degradation in the lab, in the aquarium with artificial seawater. And recently, we start to test and the biodegradation test around the Japan Sea, around the Japan coast water. But now we do not collaborate with the abroad university or the companies, but we must collaborate such a test to accelerate the development of the marine biodegradable plastics. Okay, I want to collaborate. Yeah.
Thank you. Next one.
Actually, I have done so much such international collaboration. In my talk, I suggest the importance of the collaboration of the researchers with different specialty. In that sense, what I need is what they know, or which kind of ideas they have, or which kind of viewpoints they have. So in that sense, I don't care so much about their nationality. Yes, but in some case, the researchers with different nationality have different viewpoint or different way of thinking. So in that sense, in some case, I enjoyed such a discussion, and I got some idea from such discussion. So yeah, in that sense, I think such international cooperation is important for Moonshot project.
Okay, thank you very much. And
so I'm not collaborate with other countries, but now we starting about our collaboration. We collaborate with some company or the organization in Japan, but unfortunately we have no chance to discuss about direct capture with other countries. So I want to get such a chance for attending the conference or something like that.
thank you very much. So I found that importance of the exchange, the researchers exchange something based on the money exchange, right? Budget exchange, I think. And second point is I found that the barrier of the international collaboration is the nationalism of the science and technology. So we have to clarify the nationalism and reject the nationalism and build up the international collaboration. That is our finding in this topic. So next is but do you have any comment about the international collaboration? Please. Mainly, we have the only one.
No, I don't mean so. But anyway, well, I'm working on the biomass field, and what I also encounter is that the collaborator sometimes in the developing countries. Today, the discussion was basically for the new technology and good technology. Maybe we can employ that kind of technology, but maybe that technology is not directly applicable to the developing country. So maybe we cannot forget the past aspect of that kind. So maybe we should be thinking about developing country, and we should be thinking how to apply our technology to that countries, and maybe the collaboration with them is also important. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for your good comment. So we would like to go to the last discussion point, how to realize the challenging technologies in the future. So this is very much difficult for get some answers. Because Moonshot project is R&D project, very infant technologies. So in the future we how to realize this kind of the infant technologies in the market. So do you have any comment? If please, Nemeto-san is the first.
The one comment I'd have on that third question is there was an economist of innovation named Chris Freeman, and I thought he put it really well in terms of having studied lots of historical successful innovations. The successful ones were ones that coupled a technological opportunity with a market opportunity. And it's important to realize that the Moonshot and doing R&D really supports the creation of new technological opportunities. But that's not sufficient. R&D in Moonshot is really helpful, and it boosts the supply of new technologies, but we still need people, companies, organizations to want those technologies, to pay for them, to adopt them, to start to use them. And that part needs to be there to realize the potential of these technologies. And sometimes that's policy, sometimes it's finding niche markets where people value the technology. But I think that's something to think about relatively early on, because then there's still an R&D part once adoption happens of how do you redirect R&D to target the barriers that come up when we start to commercialize and scale up.
Okay, please.
Okay, before answering the question, I would like to reformulate the question. I would rather ask the question how to realize challenging or promising solutions in the future, because as a matter of fact, sometimes maybe the solution, the technology is not the solution. I tried to make that point when we talked about plastic litter in the ocean, because there are a lot of other measures with which you can tackle this problem. So I would encourage you to think more in a holistic way, because there is also a lot of not only we do need a lot of technology research, that's absolutely crucial, but I think we also need a lot of policy research and research on behavioral aspects, public acceptance. This is absolutely crucial for the deep transformation of the energy system that we want to achieve, because we need the buy-in of the people. They need to embrace this, and there is a lot that needs to be done on that field also, where there is a lot of research needs also in the social sciences.
Okay, thank you.
So, sometimes they're winners and sometimes they're losers. And so if you set the system up so that you're looking at the innovative technologies that are going to put the established companies out of business, it's a problem. And then there's going to be pushback on realizing new technologies and solutions. And as I said in my talk, it's one of the advantages I have is I don't have to worry about the existing industries. But if there's some way to encourage the existing industries to think of themselves as basic commodities, whether it's communication. AT&T doesn't do much telegraph work anymore. They're now telephones. They're a communication company, or someone who is an energy company rather than thinking of themselves as strictly fossil fuels. That seems to me would ease the transition, because it wouldn't be a matter of shutting huge current companies out of business in favor of others, because obviously they're going to fight that as hard as they can, but to help them transition into new ways of doing business.
Can I just comment this one? Because look, I think we fully agree with all what you said. This said, right now we are in a very interesting dynamics on a global scale, because suddenly we're seeing some existential crises to some of these companies, which will require that they completely rethink the business plans. Some of you might know, look, I said this in my talk, when we had this agreement with ExxonMobil, where we as NREL, some people said, why do you work with the devil to do this for the big oil and gas? But there's a very clear reason. They have the money. They're starting to rethink the business model. Look, historically, ExxonMobil was one of the largest companies to provide whale oil for the lamps in New York. And they had to completely change to now be around. And the same is happening in some of the businesses in the oil and gas, in the utility sector, also on the car manufacturers, because there is a completely changing of the business models. And I think this enables a brand new collaboration with some of these folks to move this forward. My point also to this one question is a very simple one. I think there might be people sitting in a high school who have some new ideas, which we don't even know that they exist. So how do you keep the openness, and how do you keep the drive towards new ideas open into this program? Because who knows, there's something might come from left field, and we have a completely different venue to solve some of these problems. I think the key is to keep the program open enough and not going into this with our traditional thinking head on, where we say, no, this does not work because. It's always very easy to downplay and poo-poo a lot of these new ideas. That's a normal human reaction. And I think if you keep it open, that new ideas can come into this program, then you might enable this, that you have good ideas.
Okay, thank you very much. Probably we need a paradigm change, on the business model or something. So we have only the 30 seconds, okay, to close this session. So I would like to make a proposal to our, conclusion of our working group. So Moonshot goal candidate, that is realization of the sustainable resources circulation to recover the global environment by 2050. So we have so much, so many discussion. However, this is only one thing to get the agree with, this target. So that is my, opinion. However, do you have any other, conclusion? If you have, please introduce. So we need to realize the sustainable resource circulation. Okay, that circulation is mainly from the environment to our society, and emphasize inside of our society. That is my conclusion. Is that okay? So I can wrap up, I can report at the wrap up sessions. Thank you very much for your participant of this working group, and thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to, I appreciate very much for the speakers. So please, thank you very much. I would like to close this session. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.